Thank you all for joining us at Imam al-Asr Masjid. So as we mentioned last night, we will be having programs every weekend until Ibrahim, inshallah. Tonight is going to be the second and final night where we are commemorating the martyrdom of Imam al-Sajjad. And inshallah, we will begin the program as we do every night with recitation of the Holy Quran. And I would like to welcome Zainal Abidin Hussein to please come up, Zainal Abidin Hassan to please come up and recite Quran for us. Please welcome him with a loud salawat.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أنبئكم بخير من ذلكم للذين اتقوا عند ربهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها وأزواج مطهرة ورضوان من الله والله بصير بالعباد. الذين يقولون ربنا إننا آمنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وقنا عذاب النار. الصابرين والصادقين والقانتين والمنفقين والمستغفرين بالأسحار. شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط. لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. إن الدين عند الله الإسلام ما جاءهم العلم إلا من بعد ما جاءهم العلم بغيا بينهم ومن يكفر بآيات الله فإن الله سريع الحساب صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Zain, for that beautiful recitation. So before we move on, I would like to acknowledge the sponsors of tonight's program. This program is dedicated to a marhum of Brother Imtiaz Jamal's family. So with that, let us please recite a Fatiha for them after a salawat. And as a reminder, we are trying to move our masjid in a more sustainable direction. And one of the ways that we're trying to do that is to encourage everybody to bring their own reusable water bottles. And if you can bring them pre-filled, that's great. Otherwise, you can fill them up here as well. This way, inshallah, we'll use less disposable water bottles in the future. And next, I would like to invite Sister Masuma Hassan to recite some poetry for us. Please welcome her with a loud salawat.
Salawat. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I'm going to recite a poem I wrote about Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. There was the young warrior Qasim who came to represent his father. There was Abbas, Qamar Bani Hashim, who would not drink a sip of water. Burayd, Muslim, Sa'id, Hur, Habib, Zuhair ibn Qayn, Aun, Muhammad, Ali, and Ali, they sacrificed all for Hussein. There were those who secretly left Kufa to answer their Imam's call. There were those who shielded his salah, their bodies taking the fall. All these 72 martyrs, from the gray-haired to the youth, knew they'd be slaughtered, but stood faithfully by the truth. They knew eternal peace was near, that soon they'd achieve Jannah, that now there was no need to fear, for they'd be welcomed by Lady Zahra. Among them was the one who asked for sword and cane, sick with fever, but a loyal son who asked to die for Hussein. His test was not in a fight with swords or with spears. He guided us to what is right and taught us to shed tears. Now they depart Karbala, clad in shackles and chains, paraded through Kufa and treated with utmost disdain. The enemy rejoices at Ahlul Bayt's pain, mockery in their voices, conscious lost in material gain. With their blinded eyes, with their blackened hearts, they failed to realize that message Karbala imparts. A message that would have been hidden without Lady Zainab and Imam Sajjad, a pure love for Hussein they've given through their speeches and du'as. In prison he passed many a night, spent in worship and prayer, praying the Ummah was ready to fight the coming darkness and despair. His tears reach us and show us how to live. His du'as teach us how to give and forgive. I aspire to achieve even a fraction of his dignity, so when this world I leave, I shall be with Imam Mahdi. In the name of Allah, the compassionate, the kind, O Allah, for your representative, son of Al-Hassan, the guide, in this hour and in every hour, with your might and with your power, be a guardian, a leader, a helper, a proof, and a guide, to bring pious, honest, praying people to the right side. When you take him out of hiding, and on this earth he'll be residing, let him live for a long time in a world with peace and no crime. Salawat.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Sister Masuma, for that beautiful poem. Inshallah, now we'll be moving on to the lecture portion of our program. Tonight is going to be the final night that we are honored to have our visiting scholar, Shaykh Reza Himyari, speaking for us. Shaykh Reza was born in Iran and raised in the Northern Virginia area. He began his Hausa studies in Najaf, Iraq, and continued his studies at the Ahlul Bayt Islamic Seminary in Chicago, Illinois. Today, he is currently a PhD student in Islamic Studies at the University of Chicago. With your loudest of salawats, please welcome him to the stage. Salawat.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلق أجمعين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. Everyone together. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وعباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Dear brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last night we began our conversation on the legacy of Imam Zainul Abidin Ali ibn Hussein alayhi salam, and how we can learn and attempt to implement that legacy in our own lives. We said that according to the Quran and according to the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, history is not something for those who have simply passed. Quranic history continues and applies to our lives in this very day. So long as we have those attributes within ourselves or within our societies, within our communities that Allah talks about and refers to in past communities, then those same lessons apply to us. So Banu Israel is simply a metaphor for a reality that we find in our own souls and in our communities. All of those past peoples who Allah either blessed with prophets, and after He blessed them, and after they rejected those prophets, Allah sent His punishment and His destruction upon those people. Allah says, and according to the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, the true tafsir of these ayat is talking about a certain reality that we might find in our own lives as well. And so when we think about the lessons of the legacy of Imam Sajjad, we think about it in terms of a continuation of the same story. The story that passed with the previous prophets, the same story that continued with the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad al-Mustafa, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And it was the same story that occurred during the day of Ashura. And Imam Hussein and his companions, that band of men who came and were martyred in the lands of Karbala. It's the same legacy. Said that Imam Sajjad, part of the legacy and the teachings of Imam Sajjad is the continuation of the message of Karbala. Imam Sajjad's teachings were crucial to our understanding of what happened in Karbala. That time, the only way that you would know what was happening in the Muslim world was if that news was brought by a person or by a people. And so when the Imam would go from one city to another, he would tell the people, the grandson of the Prophet of Islam, that same person who the Prophet would carry on his shoulders, the most beloved person to the Prophet, that person was killed by the same ummah who is attributing themselves to the Prophet of Islam. But the mission and the message of Imam Zainul Abidin was not simply to convey this news. He tried to continue that same mission and message of Imam Hussein. Why was it that Imam Hussein left Medina and went to Mecca? And then he left Mecca and went towards Kufa. Imam Zainul Abidin tried to teach people what was that mission and what was that message. It was a continuation of the memory of the Prophet of Islam that was being erased and forgotten by the Muslims. So that's why we see one city after another, when they hear what had happened in Karbala, the people start to question where they have fallen. One of the beauties of the events in Karbala was that people not only understood the courage and the bravery of Imam Hussein, the taqwa of Imam Hussein, that he was not willing to begin this battle. He always, whenever his own companions would tell him, this is the right time, this is the best time and we can come up with the best outcome, the Imam would say, wait, we are not going to engage, we're not going to start this battle. We are not the aggressors. Time and time again, even on the day of Ashura, Imam Hussein would say, we are not the aggressors. And so we must wait until they begin. So when the caravan goes towards Kufa, the people hear, and they understand what had happened. It goes towards Sham, the people hear, and even these people of Sham who had not many of them, had not even known who the Prophet really was. Their only understanding of Islam was that there was a Quran, and maybe they read that Quran. There was some person who had come 50 or 60 years ago by the name of Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And they had a few companions amongst them. But they didn't know that the Prophet had an Ahlul Bayt. They didn't know that there was a legacy, a people who claimed that they were continuing those teachings. And so that's why when Muawiyah says that Nahnu shajaratul an-Nabi, Nahnu shajaratul Rasulillah, he claims for himself, Muawiyah, a person who was descended from the greatest enemy of the Prophet, Abu Sufyan, who until he was forced to convert to Islam, he was the arch enemy of the Prophet. They were known as the Tulaqa, those who were freed after the Prophet came and conquered Mecca. These same people, the same lineage, is now coming to claim that they are that tree of the Rasulullah. And people will accept this claim if they don't know otherwise, if they don't know any better. This was the state of the city of Sham. But even in this state, when the people of Sham begin to hear the message of Imam Zain al-Abidin, initially they were celebrating that Amirul Mu'mineen Yazid has conquered and overcome. These are their words. Amirul Mu'mineen Yazid has overcome and vanquished the Khawarij, those who rebelled against the Khalifa, the Muslims. When Imam Zain al-Abidin tells them that we are that legacy of Rasulullah, don't be fooled. Even the city of Sham, you see that there is some revolt, some uprising, some discussion that is happening amongst the people. And then Imam Zain al-Abidin gets to the city of Medina. And we see that over just a couple of years, the entire Muslim Ummah, when they hear the words of Imam Zain al-Abidin and they see his cries, they see his tears, the Muslim Ummah, the spirit and the soul of the Muslim Ummah is in agony. They see the beauty of Imam Hussein's character and they see where they have fallen. And that's really one of the messages of Imam Hussein. Not only do we see that light, but we see the darkness. Not only do we understand and exposed to the light of Imam Hussein and the guidance that Imam Hussein was trying to guide the Muslim Ummah towards, but they at the same time saw how much they had lost their path. How much of a shell of Islam had remained for themselves. There was a veneer. They called themselves Muslims. And they even had companions amongst them. So what's interesting is that when Imam Zain al-Abidin, Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein, comes into the city of Medina, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If we want to think about how low the Muslims had fallen, to what depths? A person by the name of Ibrahim ibn Talha, the son of a companion of the Prophet, who maybe even himself had seen the Prophet, or had heard at least about who the Prophet was. Ibrahim ibn Talha says to Imam Zain al-Abidin in a mocking tone, Man al-Ghalib? Who prevailed in Karbala? This is after Imam Sajjad comes back from Sham, after all of the events of Karbala had occurred. It's reported, he said, who was the one who was successful in this battle that you all engaged in? Mocking Imam Zain al-Abidin, knowing that Imam Hussein had been killed. This message and the news had already reached Medina. And so Imam Zain al-Abidin says, wait until we hear the adhan. Wait until you engage in your salat. And then you will know who prevailed. Then you will know who is ghalib. Because it's still my grandfather and the grandfather of my father who is going to be called in the adhan. It's that same Rasulullah who I am from his lineage. And the honor and the respect that you have as a companion, as the son of a companion, is simply because of your connection to the Prophet of Islam. So we think about how far the Muslims had fallen. I gave this image last night. There's at one time when you think about a flower, and maybe you write down the word flower. You think about even maybe in your mind. But then when you actually see it in real life, it's a different story. There's a complexity, there's a beauty to actually seeing the thing for what it is. The Muslims had only understood up to the time of Imam Zainul Abidin, not many hundreds of years after the Prophet of Islam, just 50 years. They had only understood about Islam the name. They would call themselves Muslim. And maybe they had these ideas in their mind. This is, for example, what the Quran says about taqwa. But they hadn't understood, they hadn't seen and experienced what true taqwa is. And so all of the things that they would read, the Quran that they would recite, the ahadith that they would recite from the Prophet of Islam, these were all just words. They didn't see it and experience what taqwa is. And this is really what one of the other legacies of Imam Zainul Abidin was. Is he showed them what taqwa is. Not false taqwa. Because there were still companions amongst the Muslims. People who would use taqwa to argue against Imam Hussein. They would say when before Imam Hussein would rise up, some of these same companions would come and tell the Imam, ittaqaya, don't rise up against a person like Yazid. وَلَا تُفَرِّقَ جَمَاعَةَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And don't cause a commotion. Don't separate yourself from the multitudes of these Muslims, from the group and the community of Muslims. Have taqwa. That was the message of the companions to Imam Hussein, telling him to not rise up against a person like Yazid. And so what Imam Zainul Abidin does, he sees that the sacrifice has been given by his father. And this sacrifice, on one level, is opening the eyes of the Muslims towards the reality of their own situation. The evil that they had fallen to, and how much they had forgotten that message of Rasulullah. And so we see that slowly the Muslims, they are fighting against this same person that they were telling the Imam Hussein to not rise up against. But one of the legacies, one of the messages of Imam Hussein was, don't just think about this as a political movement. I'm not rising up against Yazid simply as a political movement. I'm rising up against Yazid because he is destroying the foundations of what the Muslim society is built on. So we see, again, when Imam Zainul Abidin comes back to the city of Medina, we see that the Madinese, the people of Medina, they are up in arms. They say, how could this happen in our day and age, right in front of our own eyes, under our noses? And so they send a delegation. They kick out the governor of Yazid. They send a delegation to Yazid in Sham. And this delegation of people who they respected and they honored, they go to Yazid. And they see that Yazid, he's claiming that he's Khalifatul Mu'mineen, Khalifatullah, Amirul Mu'mineen. This Yazid, he lives a life of drinking and of entertainment. And the way that he honors these muttaqeen of the city of Medina is that he tells them to come and join the party. He gives them money, thousands upon thousands of dirhams. And he gives them whatever comforts they wanted. And they see the true nature of a person like Yazid, who was ruling over them, setting the standard for the Muslims. When they come back to the city of Medina, it is said that these people, this delegation who had gone to Sham, they come and report back to the people of Medina. They said, we never understood, we never thought that Yazid was such a person. Once we saw it, now we have to rebel. Now we have to rise up. And then the city of Medina breaks away. They reject the Umayyads, and they break away. Yazid responds. He sends one of his generals, Muslim. He sends this person who is called, his name was Muslim. And it is said that this person, first he besieges the city. And he says, you have 3 days. Either you come back and you give bay'ah to Yazid, this bay'ah that you had broken, or I'm going to show you a day that you have never seen. And it is said that this Muslim, Ibn Uqba, he raises the city. The people of Medina don't give in. And after 3 days, he kills as many Sahaba as he can. Companions of the Prophet, he kills them. He raises the city, destroys the entire city. He kills so much that this event becomes a famous event. Waqat Harra. It's a famous event in the history of Islam. The very city of Medina, the city that the Prophet of Islam had said, the people of this city are blessed. The city should not be touched. The same city then becomes destroyed by the general of Yazid. The same general and Yazid had given the orders. You can do whatever you feel. Do whatever you want. Bring these people to heel. You have to make them pledge allegiance again. But don't touch Ali ibn al-Hussein. That was the order. Don't touch Ali ibn al-Hussein. He is safe. Now what does an imam do in this situation? A person who is leading the Muslims, who is representing Islam. We said that if you see taqwa, you understand it. And you see that there are different dimensions to a person who is muttaqi. We're looking for those people. We don't just want words. We want to see a true human being. Imam Zainul Abidin, it is reported that when the city of Medina first rose up, first rejected the governor of Yazid, Marwan ibn Hakam, we all know who Marwan is. That same person who, when Imam Hussein was first rejecting the bay'ah of Yazid, he said, either you give bay'ah or something terrible is going to happen to you. And he was instigating Imam Hussein to give that bay'ah. He was a sworn enemy of the Ahlul Bayt. When these people of Medina rise up against Yazid, this Marwan sees that his situation is precarious. It's dangerous. It's become a dangerous city for himself and for his family. It is said that this same Marwan comes knocking on the door of Imam Sajjad. And he says, give refuge to my family. And Imam Sajjad accepts. And he gives refuge to the family of a sworn enemy of the Ahlul Bayt. And so throughout all of that rebellion, that tumultuous time, Imam Sajjad's house is that source of peace and comfort. When Muslim comes and attacks the city of Medina and he kills companion after companion, it is Imam Sajjad that is giving refuge. It is said that he gives refuge to over 400 women and children of the city of Medina, because the order had come, do not harass Imam Zainul Abidin. This is what true taqwa is. On one hand, if you look at a person who is muttaqi, you see he cares about the creatures of Allah. Whether they are friend or foe, he gives refuge to them. At the time of war, people who are battling, they don't know whether somebody is innocent or guilty. They will kill whoever they want. And this is what happened in the city of Medina. And so Imam Sajjad gives refuge to these people. He takes them outside of the city and he protects them. This is one dimension. There is a hadith of our 8th Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Reza, where the Imam says, an Imam كالشمس الطالعة بنورها على العالم. Gave one image yesterday of a flower. The Imam gives us another image. If you want to know what an Imam, a responsibility, a function of an Imam is, think about the sun. An Imam is like the sun, and it shines with its light upon the entire earth. And then it is وَفِي الْأُفُقِ بِحَيْثُ لَا تَنَالُهَا الْعُيُونُ وَالْأَبْصَارُ, or وَالْأَيْدِ وَالْأَبْصَارُ. An Imam is a person who is like the sun, shines upon the entire earth, whether the earth, the people, or the creation is good or bad, is light or dark, has its benefit for all of humankind, rather even for all of creation. And yet the Imam is like a person who is like a sun which is in the farthest horizon, such that no one could reach it. No hand nor eye could reach that sun. So we think about this image. A sun in the horizon, and its light shines upon the earth, and yet it's in the farthest distance. The Imam is telling us that the benefit of an Imam, Imam Reza alayhi salam, is telling us that the benefit of an Imam reaches every single part of Allah's creation. And however much we might try to reach it, we might try to understand the benefits of an Imam, we're always going to get one dimension. So that's why we have to think about and learn from and go and study the lives of the Imams. Because whenever we go and study the lives of the Imams, we're always going to get a new dimension. We're always going to get it from a different perspective. And this isn't actually something that is very sort of far-fetched. Sometimes we have people in our own lives, people who are truly aware and conscious of Allah when we think about them. For example, some of us might have our fathers or our mothers, our grandparents sometimes, or people within our community. When we think about somebody who's really both compassionate, but also muttaqi, who's conscious and aware of Allah, we say that is the person who has realized this virtue. I think about taqwa in terms of an individual who has manifested this in his own life. I don't just think about it in terms of words. When I think about that person, again, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, many times we have grandparents who are those people who kind of guide us towards what we're supposed to do. They change our orientation whenever we think about them or whenever we're in their presence. That person, just their presence, being in their presence, can be a source of guidance. Just their memory can be a source of guidance. And this is why it's so important for us to be in a community, to care about these people. Because a lot of times, those people who are truly muttaqi, who truly have inculcated those virtues in their soul, a lot of times those people are the ones who are maybe the least well-known amongst us. They're the most obscure, because they don't care about the limelight. They don't care to be known. And so a lot of times they're the ones who are the most ignored. A lot of times you actually have to go and search them out. We have to be in the company of these people. Because whenever we think about a problem, I think about, for example, how I should lead my life, what decisions I should make. I can resolve that problem. I can answer that question in terms of, well, how would this person make that decision? How would he answer this question? Because it's a matter of an orientation. I look towards certain people who have inculcated those virtues, who see Allah, And this is why we look towards, if we don't have, for example, those people in our own lives, those people in our own communities, we just simply haven't found them. Our ultimate ideal, our ultimate goal is the Ahlul Bayt. We look in whichever part of the Ahlul Bayt's life, we see that taqwa is the ultimate characteristic. But it's not an empty taqwa. When we look in the life of Imam Zainul Abidin, we see that Imam Zainul Abidin is known for his ibadah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He is known as Zainul Abidin, the person who is the jewel of the worshippers. Sayyidul Sajjadin, the master of those who prostrate themselves. The Imam was known as Dhut Thafanat. This is one of the characteristics, the names of Imam Sajjad. Dhut Thafanat. He was a person, he was a man who, the parts of his body that would come onto the ground during sajda had formed calluses upon them. A thafan, or a thafana, is a callus. He had prostrated so much upon the ground. He had worshipped Allah to such an extent that his body, the different parts of his body, were forming calluses because they were placed on the ground so much. Whenever he would stand for prayer, it is said that as soon as he would begin to do wudu, his color would change. It is said that his skin would lose that color. He would stand in prayer. It is said that he would stand so straight and moving so little throughout his prayer that he was compared to the trunk of a tree. If some wind came and blew him to the side, that's the only moment that he would move. It would only move maybe his clothes. But he was so aware of Allah. He would see Allah when he was praying. Just as much as I would, for example, see my father, or see someone that I respected dearly, or I honored dearly, and I would stand in attention and alert in front of them. This is how Imam Zainul Abidin would stand in front of Allah. It is said that our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, he would say that I would look at my father, Imam Zainul Abidin, and I would see how much he would pray throughout the day and the night, how much he would fast. I would see that his feet would start to swell. His eyes would start to sink into his face. His color would change. He would do such a level of ibadah, and he would cry so profusely whenever he would stand for ibadah, that it would make me cry. This is Imam Muhammad al-Baqir saying, I would cry when I would see Imam Sajjad crying. That's what taqwa means. In the face of Allah, I pray to Allah knowing and seeing Him. That's what taqwa is. I see a person who has taqwa, and I take an example from their lives. I am in the presence of those people. That's really one of our goals that we should set for our lives. To be in the presence of a person who has true taqwa. But taqwa, for Imam Sajjad, was not simply an individual practice. Yes, Imam Sajjad prayed to Allah in a way that no one would equal him. Imam Sajjad was known, whether amongst his Shia or people who did not accept the imamat of Imam Zainul Abidin. Whenever you read the account and the words that people who would later on become the heads of other madahib of Islam, other people would really hold very dearly, every single person who would meet the Imam, they would say, this is the best of the Muslims. This is the best and the afdal of the Ahlul Bayt. There was no one like him. But the taqwa of Imam Zainul Abidin, again, was not something simply as an individual practice. Imam Zainul Abidin, just as much as he was praying and fasting for his individual practice, he was showing to the Muslims that this should be your value. This should be your orientation, what you should spend your life for. As I said yesterday, the Muslims and the characteristics and the criteria for the Muslims, the things that the Muslims had begun to value amongst themselves, was wealth, was prestige, was how much land they could acquire for themselves, how many servants they could buy and sell, how far they could get in their own personal wealth and in their own personal lives. Imam Zainul Abidin is saying at the same time, don't consider a person like Yazid, a king, an emperor like Yazid, or the Banu Umayyah, as the highest goal that you set for yourself. Don't try to emulate these people. The message of Rasulullah is ultimately a message of taqwa. Inna akramakum indallah atqakum. The people that you honor, that you respect as a Muslim are not the people who have more money or more power. They're the people who have more taqwa. And so just at the same time as the taqwa of Imam Zainul Abidin was an individual practice, it was also a message to the Muslims. This should be your ultimate goal in life. This should be what you pursue and you think about throughout your days. That is your task. Now, we don't say Imam Zainul Abidin attained taqwa so that he could give this political goal, this political message, or this social message. Imam Zainul Abidin is increasing the social and political consciousness of the Muslims. He doesn't reduce taqwa to a political or a social message. He increases the politics and the society to accept and orient themselves towards a higher goal. So politics, society become a means towards increased taqwa, towards an increased awareness of Allah. Sometimes we flip the script. We think that if a person is muttaqi, then, for example, they should become the political leaders or the social leaders. But Imam Zainul Abidin is saying a society should be an environment. Politics should further this ultimate goal that every single human being must reach. And so taqwa becomes the ultimate end, and politics and society become means towards that end. And this is how we see that Imam Zainul Abidin functioned in those most crucial of times. I said, on the one hand, you have the city of Medina being destroyed and demolished by Banu Umayyah. Then Banu Umayyah turned their attention towards Mecca, because the people of Mecca, under the guidance of Abdullah ibn Zubayr, they as well rise up. They hear about what had happened in Karbala, and Abdullah ibn Zubayr is also the son of the companion, Zubayr, is also causing the people of Mecca to rise up. We see the taqwa of Imam Zain al-Abidin, then we see the depths to which the Muslims had fallen. It's a two-sided coin. They turned their attention towards Mecca. When Muslim ibn Uqba, it is said that he was an old man. And so when the call comes that Mecca as well must be overcome, and the people of Mecca must be vanquished as well, that they must be brought to heel. When he goes towards Mecca, he actually dies on the way. Another general is put in his place. And what they end up doing is Abdullah ibn Zubayr takes refuge in the Haram, in the Kaaba itself, near the Kaaba. So what ends up happening is that these people can't enter into the city, and they begin to catapult the city of Mecca. Again, think about the depths that the Muslims had reached. And it is said that the Kaaba itself is destroyed. It is set on fire. These catapults come and attack the Kaaba, the house of Allah. And it is only at this point that the army of Yazid takes a step back. They say, Na'udhu billah, we have destroyed the house of Allah. This is the moment where, this is the line that we have crossed. These are the red lines. Think about how far people have to fall for them to care more about a structure, a building, some sticks and some stones, more than killing the companions of the Prophet. They didn't think twice about killing the people of Medina. They didn't even think twice about killing the grandson of the Prophet. But when it comes to destroying the Kaaba, then that's when we've gone too far. That's the depths to which the Banu Umayyah had fallen. These same people now, Imam Zain al-Abidin has to open their eyes. Again, at every single stage of Imam Zain al-Abidin's journey, he opens the eyes of the Muslims. He says, reorient yourselves. This is what true taqwa is. True taqwa is not just doing proper ibadah, worshipping Allah in such a way that whoever was to see you would fall into tears himself. True taqwa is as well not simply to give refuge to those who are in need. True taqwa is also forgiving those people who do you ill. The Imam is showing the different dimensions of his character. It is said that the sabr of the Imam, this ayah of Surah Al-Furqan, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah says, Ibadur Rahman, alladina yamshuna ala al-ardi hawnan. The true worshippers of the merciful, the compassionate Allah, they're the ones who walk upon the earth in a humble and modest way. وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمْ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. And when people who are ignorant, people who are unwise, and they're ill-informed, they come and speak to them in an ill way. They say salam. They say peace be upon you. They don't respond in kind. There's a story of Imam Zain al-Abidin where the Imams, it is said, a person from the Banu Hashim, from his own family, comes and says some, maybe even curses the Imam in front of his companions in the city of Medina. Said this person comes and curses or says something ill about the Imam, and then he walks away. It is said that the Imam turns towards his companions and he says, "Did you hear what this person said? Now hear my response." And so the Imam stands up, and he walks towards this person's house. And he is reciting an ayah of the Quran under his breath. The Imam is reciting this ayah of Surah Al-Imran. The people that surrounded the Imam, when they had heard this person, and then they heard the Imam saying, "I'm going to respond to this person who has just cursed me, or who has just maybe even swore at me, who has said these things about me." When they hear that the Imam is going to respond, they think maybe na'udhu billah, the Imam is going to respond in kind. But then they hear this ayah of the Quran. The Imam is saying, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. The Imam is repeating these words. He's teaching us that in those times when we are feeling some anger, we're thinking about responding to a person who has insulted us, saying, think about these ayat of the Quran and recite them for yourself. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ, those who control their anger. They don't let it appear on their faces. وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, and those who forgive people. وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, and Allah loves those who do good and those who act beautifully. The Imam goes and knocks on this person's door, this person who has just insulted him, in front of other people. Sometimes a person insults me and we're just alone. I can forgive that person easier. But when a person comes and insults me in front of others, then it's my honor and my dignity on the line. So it becomes even more difficult for me to forgive that person. The Imam comes and knocks on this person's door, person who is a part of his own family, of the Banu Hashim. He knocks on his door. And he says, if what you said about me is true, then I ask Allah for forgiveness. But if what you said about me is false, then I ask forgiveness from Allah for you. This is the Imam's response. Doesn't respond in kind. He responds with sabr and patience and humility towards Allah. He says, maybe what you're saying is right, and I should be more aware of what I do. The person, he says, no, in fact, what I insulted you with is actually more true of myself than it is of you. And it is said that this person reorients himself towards the Imam, and he kisses the Imam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This is the Imam's personal conduct, his own personal worship, the interaction that the Imam had with people who surrounded him, the way that he cared for not just his own friends and those people of the city of Medina and gave refuge to them in those times of need, even his response to his enemies and his foes and giving refuge to their family. But it is said that one of the longest lasting legacies of Imam Zainul Abidin, one of the things that really lasts until our own day, and unfortunately this is something that is being lost within our own society, was that the Imam was pointing the Muslim Ummah and was saying that that thing that, again, the same message, that thing that you all are valuing as a society, which is power and prestige, which is wealth, are the wrong things to value as a Muslim Ummah. What you must value is your relationship with Allah and the wisdom and passing on that legacy of Rasulullah. And so the people who must be honored amongst the Muslims must be those people who carry on that legacy, who recount the ahadith and the teachings of Rasulullah. In other words, those people who recount the ahadith and the fiqh of Rasulullah. That's the highest standard. The scholars amongst the Muslims are the ones who must be respected and honored. That's the highest level that a Muslim can reach in terms of their scholarship, their knowledge, and along with that knowledge, the taqwa that they can acquire for themselves. And we see that during the time of Imam Zain al-Abidin, there was an increase of the scholars of the city of Medina, high-ranking scholars, people who are even honored today. People like, there's various names, Urwa ibn Zubair, people who continued the history and began talking about Rasulullah. The biography of Rasulullah, the biography of the Prophet of Islam, are started by these people. Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, companions, or rather tabi'een, who are well known amongst the Muslims. These people began to migrate and to go towards Damascus, go towards Sham. Instead of increasing their own scholarship, these people who were well known amongst the Muslims as scholars, they began to migrate towards Sham, searching for that wealth and for that prestige that the court of the Bani Umayyah were giving. Even one of the khulafa of Banu Umayyah, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, person who was the Khalifa of the Muslims during the time of Imam Zain al-Abidin. This person was known amongst the people of Medina as being one of the highest ranking scholars of the people of Medina. It is said that he would sit at the feet of the scholars, the fuqaha. He would hear the ahadith of the Prophet being recounted, and he would speak little in the face of these people. So they had knowledge. As soon as Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, it is said, he finds out that he is going to become the Khalifa, it is said that he closes the Quran. And he says, I will have nothing to do with you from this point onward. And he goes and searches for, and he tries to cultivate that same power that the Banu Umayyah were given. All of these scholars were continuing to go and migrate towards Sham, the city, the center of power for the Banu Umayyah. What Imam Zain al-Abidin does is he says we must reorient ourselves as a Muslim ummah towards true scholarship. And one of the lasting legacies of Imam Zain al-Abidin, and then continued by Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam and the rest of the Ahlul Bayt, is they Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Is they say that the center and the source of power for the Muslims is not the political power. It's not the wealth. It's this scholarship. It's this knowledge. So if you want to have respect and honor as a Muslim, it's how much and how close you are to that other center. How close you are to knowledge and the scholarship and that legacy of Rasulullah. And so it is said that one of the princes of Banu Umayyah, he comes for Hajj, and I will end with this note. It's a very famous story that Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, the son of the same Abdul Malik, it is said that he comes towards Hajj. He's committing this pillar of Islamic practice. Very famous person, known as the prince of the Banu Umayyah. He in fact later becomes the Khalifa of the Banu Umayyah, the Khalifa that runs the Muslim Ummah. This same Hisham, it is said that when he goes into Hajj, when he enters into the city of Mecca, he saw all of these people. For those who have gone to Mecca, you see that there are so many people during the time of Hajj that you can't even get close. Sometimes it might even be hard to, at one time when there was a masjid that surrounded the Kaaba, sometimes maybe even hard to get into the masjid itself during the time of Hajj. It is said that when Hisham ibn Abdul Malik goes towards the Kaaba, there was so many people that it was difficult for him, and it was in fact impossible for him to get close to the Kaaba. He was trying to go and touch Hajar al-Aswad, and he couldn't because there were so many people. Then all of a sudden, he sees a man walk into the Masjid al-Haram, and he sees that this sea of people spread, and they open up. Think about, for example, Nabi Musa spreading and opening the Red Sea. It's almost as though these people sensed that this person is coming. And Hisham ibn Abdul Malik and his entire entourage is witnessing this. He sees this man come towards the Kaaba, and as he gets closer, the sea of people open up. And he goes and he touches, this man, goes and he touches Hajar al-Aswad. And then he comes back. Hisham ibn Abdul Malik says, I've never seen such a thing. How is it that these people, these Muslims, they know who I am? I am the crown prince. And yet they don't even think twice about pushing me aside. And yet this man comes and they sense him, sense his presence, and they open up and they make way for him. Who is this person? One person amongst his entourage was a man by the name of Farazdaq, a famous poet. And he says, if you don't know who this man is, let me tell you. And he recites a very beautiful poem. هذا الذي تعرف البطحاء وطأته. This is the man who this land knows his footsteps. Not just his person and his whisperings towards Allah, but he knows his very footsteps. وَالْبَيْتُ يَعْرِفُهُ وَالْحِلُّ وَالْحَرَمُ. And the house of Allah even knows who he is. وَالْحِلُّ وَالْحَرَمُ. All of the sanctuaries of Allah and outside of those sanctuaries, all of Allah's creation knows who this man is. هذا ابن خير عباد الله كلهم. هذا التقي النقي الطاهر العلم. This is the son of the best of Allah's creation. This is at-taqi, an-naqi, at-tahir, al-alam. This is the most pious of people, the most pure of people. This is that sign and that flag of Islam. هذا ابن فاطمة. هذا ابن فاطمة. إن كنت جاهله. This is a man who is the son of Fatima, if you don't know him. بجده أنبياء الله قد ختموا. It is by his grandfather, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, that's the line of prophecy had ended. Farazdaq says this is Imam Zainul Abidin. Not just the people, but this land knows who he is. This is the man that the Muslims come to respect and honor, the highest standard that they set for themselves. And so we see that not just during the time of Imam Zainul Abidin, but throughout time, when the Muslims want to see who they have to accept as their Khalifa, they look towards the ulama, the fuqaha. He reorients the direction and the criteria that the Muslims consider for themselves. Imam Zainul Abidin says, the people who set the standard are the ulama. At one point, the ulama have to give bay'ah to the Khalifa, Imam Zainul Abidin, and the function of the Ahlul Bayt comes and switches the script. He says if a Khalifa wants to have legitimacy, he has to give bay'ah to the ulama. Scholarship, taqwa becomes that ultimate standard. This is how one of the legacies of Imam Zainul Abidin. And so we see that the best and the brightest of the Muslims throughout Islamic history, not just during the times of the Ahlul Bayt, but throughout Islamic history become those who dedicate their lives towards scholarship. The best and the brightest, not towards those who further their own physical and material wealth. And in fact, these scholars are people who are maybe even amongst the poorest of the Muslims. Sometimes they don't have much wealth or much physical comfort in their lives, but they become the standard. This is one of the legacies of Imam Zainul Abidin. And this is a legacy that all of the Muslims benefit from. This is a legacy that all of the Muslims throughout history benefit from. Let us turn our attention towards Karbala. We think about the legacy of Imam Zainul Abidin. I said one of the highest legacies of Imam Zainul Abidin, if not the pinnacle of the message of Imam Zainul Abidin, was to tell the Muslims that the message of Imam Hussein is the continuation of the message of Rasulullah. But it is how Imam Zainul Abidin continued that message. It is said that Imam Zainul Abidin, throughout his entire life, would cry in the memory of Imam Hussein. It is said that whenever Imam Zainul Abidin, Imam Sajjad, would look at a cup of water, some water was brought to the Imam. It is said that the Imam would look at that cup. He would look at that water and he would cry to such an extent that his tears would fall into that water. And he would say that I will drink this cup, and yet my father and his companions were not given a drop of water to drink on the day of Ashura. And they gave their lives in ultimate thirst. It is said that one of the servants of Imam Zainul Abidin would come to the Imam and would say, "Oh Imam, is it not time for you to forget about those memories? Is it not time for you to stop crying over the loss of your father?" Imam Zainul Abidin responds, as he is crying tears of anguish, he responds, Yaqub, that prophet of Allah, he lost a single son. He lost a single son. And he knew that that son, Yusuf, was alive. And he knew that one day he will be rejoined with his son. And yet I saw with my own eyes my father being killed. And not just that, my brothers being killed. And all of the companions and my uncles and my nephews being killed. How could I ever forget that memory? How could I ever stop crying for my father? That prophet of Allah, he cried so much that he lost his eyesight. And his back was broken, it is said in the Quran. He lost his eyesight and his back was bent. How could I not cry for my entire life and beyond for the loss of my father? When I saw what had happened to him, and I saw what happened to his body. But it is said that on one of those crucial moments on the day of Ashura, that moment when Imam Hussein was left all alone, it is said that in that moment when Imam Hussein looked to his left and to his right, and he saw that all of his companions had given their lives, all of his Ahlul Bayt, Abbas had given his life by the banks of the Euphrates. Ali Akbar had given his life in front of the eyes of his father. Even Ali al-Asr had given his life. It is said that the Imam Hussein would call out, هل من ناصر ينصرني هل من ضاب يضب عن حرم رسول الله. Is there anyone who will come and help me? Is there anyone who will come and protect the haram of Rasulullah? Imam Zainul Abidin does not mention this moment, but it is said in the Maqtal that Imam Zainul Abidin heard the cry of Imam Hussein. He heard this cry of the loneliness of Imam Hussein, and he said he got up in that moment of weakness and illness of Imam Sajjad. He got up and he called to his aunt, "Oh, my aunt, give me a cane and give me my sword." And it is said that Imam Zainul Abidin exited from the tent. And Imam Hussein said, "Oh Zainab, go and hold Ali ibn al-Hussein back, for if he were killed as well, no hujjah of Allah would remain on this earth. He is the legacy that will remain from Rasulullah." It is not his moment. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. مات الحسين.
Amidst a warrior forced to stay away, while brothers and father, family and friends were killed by a people astray. Their only goal to stamp away their own prophet's legacy. Ali ibn al-Hussein, he lived it each day with patience and piety. Zainul Abidin, what sorrows you've seen, your journey filled with such pain. From Karbala, then Kufa to Sham, you spread the name of Hussein. This part's for everybody. Zainul Abidin, what sorrows you've seen, your journey filled with such pain. From Karbala, then Kufa to Sham, you spread the name of Hussein. Zainul Abidin, what sorrows you've seen, your journey filled with such pain. From Karbala, then Kufa to Sham, you spread the name of Hussein. Long you've marched on the road, while sick and shackled with chains. Your steadfastness only showed their efforts would be in vain. To silence you they debased, only themselves with their lies. They tried to leave you disgraced, but knew not how you would rise. They tried to leave you disgraced, but knew not how you would rise. Zainul Abidin, what sorrows you've seen, your journey filled with such pain. From Karbala, then Kufa to Sham, you spread the name of Hussein. Zainul Abidin, what sorrows you've seen, your journey filled with such pain. From Karbala, then Kufa to Sham, you spread the name of Hussein. They dragged you to Sham for they thought you were weak, but they did not know of your strength when you would speak. They dragged you to Sham, for they thought you were weak, but they did not know of your strength when you would speak. When your prayers are heard across heavens and worlds, and no tyrants could withstand the strength of your words. When your prayers are heard across heavens and worlds, then no tyrant could withstand the strength of your words. Zainul Abidin, what sorrows you've seen, your journey filled with such pain. From Karbala, then Kufa to Sham, you spread the name of Hussein. Zainul Abidin, what sorrows you've seen, your journey filled with such pain. From Karbala, then Kufa to Sham, you spread the name of Hussein. From pain your prayers would elevate to adorn those who worship God. Your head bowed low before your Lord earned you the name Sajjad. They dragged you to Sham, for they thought you were weak, but they did not know of your strength when you would speak. When your prayers are heard across heavens and worlds, then no tyrant could withstand the strength of your words. To silence you they debased only themselves with their lies. They tried to leave you disgraced, but knew not how you would rise. Zainul Abidin, what sorrows you've seen, your journey filled with such pain. From Karbala, then Kufa to Sham, you spread the name of Hussein. Zainul Abidin, what sorrows you've seen, your journey filled with such pain. From Karbala, then Kufa to Sham, you spread the name of Hussein. Ya Ali Zainul Abidin, 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 Ya Hussein, 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 يا حجة ابن الحسن عجل على ظهورك، يا حجة ابن الحسن عجل على ظهورك، يا حجة ابن الحسن عجل على ظهورك، يا حجة ابن الحسن عجل على ظهورك. صلوات على محمد وعلى محمد.
Can stand in the direction of Qibla for ziyarat. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام ولك السلام وإليك يعود السلام. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام على الأئمة الهادين المهديين. السلام على جميع أنبياء الله ورسله وملائكته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام على علي أمير المؤمنين. السلام على فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة أجمعين. السلام على علي بن الحسين زين العابدين وسيد الساجدين. السلام على محمد بن علي باقر علم النبيين. السلام على جعفر بن محمد الصادق. السلام على موسى بن جعفر الكاظم. السلام على علي بن موسى الرضا. السلام على محمد بن علي الجواد. السلام على علي بن محمد الهادي. السلام على الحسن بن علي الزكي العسكري. السلام على الحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي. عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله مخرجه وجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره وشيعته والمستشهدين بين يديه. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. we can end with this ayah of the Quran for all of your own family members who are ill, for community members who are ill. Just the other day, a community member mentioned that their sister is very ill. We have other community members who are going through, have gone through surgery or in a moment of difficulty. You can recite this ayah of the Quran 3 times altogether. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. And please recite a Fatiha مسبوقة بالصلوات for all of your own marhumin and marhumat. Salawat.